cauliflower is ready to be planted out under cover, and this is cauliflower for spring harvest, so growing over winter. And we've got two different varieties that I've sown myself. This is cauliflower all the year round, and then this one I popped in a little bit later, and this is a variety called Snowball. It is probably too late to actually get these going from seed now. Cauliflowers are a really quite hardy plant to grow and really like this time of the year rather than the heat, and that's going to help them not actually go to seed quickly or bolt. And we should find ourselves with some really nice heads come in the spring. Mine are being planted in the polytunnel, so if you were growing them in a tall cold frame, a polytunnel or a greenhouse, then I would definitely get them planted out now. If, however, you are growing them outside, you can pop them out now, or you could let them get a little bit bigger and pop them on at this point as well in order to do that. Or you could actually leave them in their pots in the greenhouse and then plant them out in around mid-February, early February. They're obviously going to be easy pickings for slugs and things at this time of the year, and with little else in the garden, we don't want to tempt them with that. So along with the ones that I'm going to be planting in the tunnel today, I will also be growing some on for growing outside. If, however, you don't want to wait, then I would make sure that you do have a net to pop over them and try them outside. Maybe plant half out and hold half back in order to continue growing, and then you'll have some spares for any that are eaten as well. This is the bed that they're going to be planted up into in the polytunnel, and it's where I've grown my tomatoes over the summer. The tomatoes have been cut back and the roots have been left in, so we may need to remove them if we find them, but otherwise they'll be absolutely fine. At the back here we've got the variety all the year round, and then at the front we've got the Snowball variety. Snowballs are a much smaller variety in theory. I've not grown these ones before, so they are going to go at the front, and the spacing of each of these is around 12 to 18 inches. I'm guessing the Snowball could go a little bit closer together, but these should work absolutely fine. And then at the back of the bed I've also got some garlic that we're going to be planting in here as well, just to make sure that we're using the bed well. I could in theory have placed 3 rows of these rather than the garlic at the back, but then I wouldn't be able to reach it very well myself, so it makes more sense for them to be at the front, because we are going to need to be able to access the leaves in order to cover them later on in the season. When we've cut the tomatoes out of this bed, what we've done is actually take the tomatoes right down to the roots. I've added some compost and some roots from some pepper plants, and then we've added a layer of the bio bloom to the top. I've also given it a really good water, because we had stopped watering it for the tomatoes to encourage them to actually ripen, and we don't want pockets of dry areas. So we can see here on the stem we've got a little bit of an area where it could be unsupported if we were to plant it right at the level of the soil. So what we want to do is plant them a little bit higher, and I'm going to remove these seed leaves in order to manage to do that. What this is going to do is stop any rocking of the plant, which may cause the actual head of the cauliflower not to grow into a tight head and actually cause it to open up, which is not what we want. So particularly if you're growing them outside, you may want to make sure that they're well staked as well. All we're going to do is dig a little bit of a hole. If there are any dry patches within where you dig, then it's worth popping some water in the hole. Support the plant as you turn it upside down, and there's some decent roots on there, they look good. And then we're just going to lower that into the hole, and we're going to support these really very well, so really pack that soil in around them. This is usually less of a problem when we're growing them undercover, because they're not going to have the wind that they'd have outside, but it is always worth still doing to keep them as happy as we can. Now they're all planted, we're going to give them a good water in. We won't be looking at watering this bed now for probably around another sort of 4 to 6 weeks, but we'll poke our finger into the soil If it feels wet, then we'll leave it longer. If it feels dry, then we will give it a little bit of water, and we'll continue doing that till at least February as the weather improves. With the gaps that are left between each of these plants, one thing we could do is plant some winter lettuces between them, winter spinach, some of our oriental greens, anything that you've got that you can pop in, or sow some smaller plants for cutting small and things like that of our hardy salads. Another consideration of when we actually space these plants out is when these plants are going to come out of here. So these are likely to start coming ready when I'm looking at planting out my tomatoes. So one thing that I can do is plant the tomatoes between each of these plants and let them get settled in. So do think about where you're actually going to be popping them and what might be growing in that bed next year. The remainder of these plants that we haven't actually popped into the beds, I'm now going to allow to grow on, and they'll get a little bit more roots before they actually are potted on into larger pots. And then they're going to end up in beds outside. So I will look at those with you, but just make sure that you keep an eye on the bottom of the pots and check for how many roots are in there, or tip them upside down and have a look at the roots. If they've still got plenty of space for more roots, then we don't need to worry about potting them up yet. But if they are getting quite a lot of roots, then it would be beneficial for them to be potted on. And then we can get those planted outside as and when we are ready. And as I said, that may not actually be till February. It's really going to depend on how the winter goes and whether or not you've got an area that's available and ready to be netted as well. The net isn't actually to keep these warm in any way, or really any removal of pests at this time of the year, because all the pests that we deal with over the summer aren't really an issue at this time of the year for the brassicas. It's more just to give them a microclimate that's going to be a bit kinder to them. So we don't want them to be battered a lot by wind or rain, and it will just give them that little bit of a breathing space in order to be in a sheltered position that they wouldn't be otherwise. And you may find in your garden that actually your garden is sheltered enough and that you wouldn't need that, but I would definitely have it in mine. Or if you're up north, then you may find that you can't grow them without that added protection of a net.